Hello, a very good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for coming to our webinar today, which is organized by Soroptimist International Club of Bangsar and Help University. Some of you may know that today is 10th of October. It is also World Mental Health Day, which is an international day for global mental health education and advocacy against social stigma. And each year, thousands of people come together to celebrate this awareness program to bring attention to mental illness and its effects on people. This year, in 2021, the theme is mental health in an unequal world. And our speaker today, well, I'd like to introduce myself first. I'm Juliet, and I'm a member of Soroptimist International Club of Bangsar, and I'm also a staff member of Help University. And today, my colleague, Ms. Anuja Hulanthiran, will be speaking to you all on mental health. Ms. Anuja is a licensed and registered counselor in Malaysia. She studied at Help University for both her undergraduate and postgraduate degrees in psychology and counseling. She's a lecturer in the Department of Psychology, and she teaches classes in leadership, communication, and counseling. We would now like to welcome her. And Anuja, would you like to start speaking to us and our guest?
Thanks, Miss Juliet. Thanks for that introduction. Hello, everybody, and I look forward to sharing with you on teen physical as well as mental health. So let me just get my slides up first. Okay, so hi everybody. I'd like to first thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to be here today and to talk to all of you on the topic of teen health. And this is specifically going to be about teen physical as well as mental health. So let me just give everyone maybe a quick overview on the different subtopics that we'll cover in this talk today. So I'll first look at the physical health dimension, and we'll look at things like diet, exercise, screen time, as well as body image issues that teens may face. After that, we'll get into the next section, which will be mental health, the mental health dimension. And here we'll look at some current mental health issues faced by teens today, especially during this pandemic period. And then I'll discuss some mental health red flags that may indicate if there may be underlying mental health concerns, and also how to mitigate that situation if you or someone close to you, like a friend or a family member, may be struggling with certain mental health issues. So before we get into the talk proper, let me just tell you a bit about what I do. I'm a lecturer at Help University in the Department of Psychology. And as Ms. Juliet has mentioned, I teach classes in leadership, communication, as well as counseling skills. I'm also a licensed and registered counselor, and I currently work with mostly adult as well as some teenage clients in counseling. I have previously worked with university students as well as children and women's shelters as well. So my interest area typically is relationships, specifically family and couple relationships. So let's get into the talk proper, and I'm going to start with physical health. So we all know teenagers go through really big changes, physical changes when they hit puberty. Teenagers need extra nutrition to fuel all these changes, which means you need to eat healthy food to fuel this. So your level of physical activity and your stage of development can determine exactly how much food or how much healthy food you need. You'll notice sometimes you may have a bigger appetite or a smaller appetite, which is basically your body's way of telling you how much to eat. So those are your body's signals, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well. So what is healthy food for teenagers? Healthy food for preteens as well as teenagers will include a very wide variety of fresh food from these food groups that you see here. Fruits and veggies, grain foods, dairy or dairy-free alternatives, as well as protein. So each food group, as you would already know, has different nutrients, right? Which your body needs, all of those things to grow and work properly. So that's why you need to eat a range of food from all these food groups. So fruits and vegetables basically give you energy, vitamins, antioxidants, fiber, and water. And these are the nutrients to help protect you against diseases later in life, heart disease, stroke, even some cancers. So I encourage you to choose fruits and vegetables that encompass all of this from for every meal and for snacks as well. And this should include fruits and veggies of different colors, different textures, and taste, whether it's fresh or cooked. For grain foods, now grain foods include bread, pasta, noodles, cereals, rice, and all of those things. Now, these are the foods that give you energy to grow, to develop, and to learn. And you need grains and grain foods to do all these things and to help the development of your brain and your body as well, and to give you energy. So you do need some grain foods in your diet as well. Now, dairy. So the key dairy foods tend to be things like milk, cheese, yogurt, and stuff like that. And dairy foods are important because they're a source of calcium as well as protein. So in puberty, you tend to need more calcium, right, to reach your peak bone mass and to build strong bones for life. So I encourage you to have different kinds of dairy every day. You can have different kinds of dairy in the forms of milk, cheese, yogurt, and so on. Now, if you don't eat dairy, if you don't consume it for, if you're vegetarian or vegan or for allergic reasons, you need to make sure you get dairy foods, dairy-free foods that are still rich in calcium. Yeah, it can be tofu, kale, certain vegetables, nuts, seeds, lentils. All of these things provide you with the calcium and protein that you need for bone mass. Right? But you do need to be careful. Not all dairy-free alternatives are fortified with calcium. So you need to check to see if you're getting enough calcium. Now, let's look at protein. Protein includes things like lean meat, fish, chicken, lentils, chickpeas, tofu, nuts, all of these things. Now, these are important for growth and muscle development. And this is especially so during puberty, right? So these kinds of protein-rich foods also have other things like vitamins, omega fatty acids, iron, and things like that. These are particularly important because things like the omega fatty acids, they're important for brain development as well. And things like iron is important for girls during puberty because for their periods and stuff like that, it helps to fortify your bodies. Okay. Okay. Let's now look at the Malaysian food pyramid. This is the current food pyramid updated just last year, and it supports latest research and findings as well as our changing lifestyles as well. So the previous pyramid, for example, it had bread, rice, grains, the carbohydrates at the bottom of the pyramid. But now in this current pyramid, that's been changed to fruits and vegetables. All right. Now this pyramid can give you like a basic guide on portions, serving sizes from all the different food groups. So if you are more sedentary, if you're not very active, you don't really play a lot of sports, or you're usually, at a desk, then you should follow maybe the minimum number of servings that is suggested here, kind of as a guide to help you consume more balanced meals, right? Now, the good thing, I think, with this version of the pyramid is also the guide on how much an actual serving size is. So you can see here in this image, you can see how the items are measured in cups or the scoops. So you can actually gauge how much of whichever item from whichever food group that you should be consuming. Okay. Okay. So another way to gauge your food intake is by examining the calories that you're consuming. Now, these are really general guidelines, yeah? So I want to emphasize that. These are general guidelines as to how many calories teenage boys and teenage girls should consume on a daily basis. But these can change depending on whether you're more active or you're more sedentary, your body's natural metabolism rate, your age, your height, your weight. I encourage you to focus more on consuming balanced meals and snacks, covering all the different food groups, and always have a variety of fruits and veggies, rather than focusing solely on calories itself, right? So I would also like to talk to you about mindful eating in the next slide as a way to incorporate a bit more healthier eating habits. I think it is relatively common, I think, for many of us to perhaps eat in front of the TV or some sort of screen, or eat while we're doing something else. So just, mindlessly kind of putting food in our mouths while watching our favorite shows. And before we know it, before we realize it, we finished a bag of chips or a tub of popcorn without even realizing, right? So I think this is quite common. And mindful eating is a good way to connect your mind and your body during the process of eating, so that we are more aware of what we consume. And when we do this, it also helps us make better eating decisions. So first step, or the first technique, is to first let your body catch up with your brain. So this is about eating rapidly past your full state and ignoring your body's signals, versus slowing down and eating and stopping when your body says it's full. Slowing down that process of eating is actually one of the best ways that we can get our mind and our body to communicate what we really need for nutrition. So the body actually sends the signal that says it's full about 20 minutes after the brain tells you that you're full, which is why we often unconsciously overeat. We think we're not full yet, but it takes about 20 minutes for your stomach to communicate it to your brain, telling you that you're full. All right. So when you slow your eating down, you allow your stomach, your body, to send those signals to your brain so that you don't overeat, unconsciously overeat. Right? So you slow down, you let your body catch up with your brain and hear the signals to eat the right amount. The second technique here for mindful eating is to know your body's personal hunger signals. So are you responding to an emotional want? Are you responding to an emotional need to eat? Or are you responding to your body's needs? Often we first listen to our minds, right? But like many mindfulness practice, we might discover more by tuning into our bodies first. Rather than just eating when we get some sort of emotional need or emotional signal, which it can be different for all of us. It can be stress, it can be sadness, frustration, loneliness, even boredom. We can turn that listening to our bodies instead. So is your stomach telling you that you're hungry? Is it growling? Do you have low energy? Are you feeling a bit lightheaded? So very often we eat when our mind tells us to eat because we are feeling so and so. We're feeling sad, we're feeling frustrated, we're feeling bored. Our mind tells us that and we eat. My advice here is to switch that to listening to your body instead. So listen deeply to your body's signals for hunger. Ask yourself, what are your body's hunger signals? And what, very importantly, are your emotional hunger triggers? Do you eat when you're lonely? Do you eat when you're sad? So learning your emotional triggers and learning your body's hunger signals helps you distinguish between them. The third step here is to cultivate a mindful kitchen, right? So it's a technique for you to help you become a more mindful eater. So when you eat alone, for example, you tend to perhaps overeat and stuff like that. So keeping yourself accountable, right? So another way that we often mindlessly eat is by kind of like wandering around, looking through your cabinets, eating randomly, random places, random times, rather than really being thoughtful and conscious about our meals and our snacks. Sure, we all snack from time to time. You know, sometimes you just feel like a snack. But if you want to try and practice mindful eating, you can try to incorporate this into your meals as well. Yeah. So when you schedule eating in consistent times, in consistent places with other people around, that helps to keep you accountable. Okay. So it may mean sitting down at a table instead of in front of the TV, right? It may involve putting your food in a bowl rather than just eating out of a container, for example. And it also helps to eat with other people because you're not just sharing the connection, building healthy connections, but you're also trying to slow down and enjoy the food and conversation. And you take your cues from the other person as well without, overeating or undereating based on your own thoughts and emotions. The fourth step here, excuse me, is to understand your motivations. Eating foods that are emotionally comforting versus eating food that is nutritionally more healthy. This is a tricky balance, yeah? And usually you can find nourishing foods that are also satisfying and comforting. Sometimes we can find this balance. As you practice eating healthier and eating a larger variety of healthy food, you may be less inclined to binge on comfort foods that may not be the healthiest. And you will be more inclined to enjoy healthier foods. And you may find ultimately that many foods are mentally and physically satisfying for you. Yeah, it's not something that will happen overnight, but it is something that you can try and put into practice to see if it helps you build healthier eating habits. The fifth step here is to connect deeply or more deeply with your food. So when you pause to consider all the people involved in the meal that has arrived in front of you, from the people that you love, family members who maybe prepared the food, the people who stocked the shelves, who planted, harvested the raw ingredients, who supported them. It's hard not to feel grateful and connected to the larger scheme of things. So as you consider everything that went into the meal, it becomes a bit more easy to experience and express gratitude to all the people involved in this. Yeah, it can be, friends, your ancestors who shared recipes, people, the beings who gave their lives as part of creating this meal. You give your thanks and you give your acknowledgement. So it helps you build a better connection with what you eat rather than mindlessly just consuming food. And the final step here is to really attend to your plate. Now, in counseling, we attend to our clients. We help them feel heard. We help them feel understood by attending to them in person, listening to them. So same thing over here with your food. Rather than multitasking or doing other things at the same time while you're eating, it makes you feel disconnected from your body's needs, your body's wants. So we've all had that experience that I talked about, right? You mindlessly eat and you suddenly finish a bag of popcorn or a bag of chips and you didn't even realize that you're eating so much, yeah? Because you're distracted. And when you're distracted, it becomes harder to listen to your body's signals about food or anything. So with your next meal, try to just single task rather than multitask. Yeah, so just eat without screens or distractions, or maybe eat with people so that you are having conversations with people while you're eating. So I do understand it can be difficult to consider all these aspects, all these techniques, and practice mindful eating every single time you have a meal. It really can be a lot to do. So perhaps you could try a couple of steps, maybe for one meal a day for a start, and see where it goes before adding on more steps to more meals to reap better benefits. Let's look at exercise now. So research shows teenagers need between 30 to 60 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity daily. And these activities should comprise of aerobic, muscle strengthening, and bone strengthening activities, which are listed here. And this is not an exhaustive list. There can be a lot more other kinds of activities. Aerobic activities are usually physical activities where people move large muscle groups in usually a rhythmic manner for a sustained period of time. All right, so things like running, jogging, brisk walking, bicycling, all of these are examples of aerobic activities. Yeah. For resistance training, it's more about lifting weights, which causes the body's muscles to work or hold against like a force, to push against a force, which is what's called resistance, right? So this usually involves lifting weights or using elastic bands, resistance bands, or your own body weight as well. Muscle strengthening activity can be done together with aerobic activity, as well as bone strengthening activities. There are activities that comprise of all these three types of work. Yeah, so bone strengthening activities, they produce force on the bones. So it promotes your bone growth and your bone strength. And this usually is a bit of an impact activity, impact on the ground. So things like skip rope, jumping jacks, running, brisk walking as well. These tend to be the usual bone strengthening activities that are recommended. Now let's look at screen time. Here are some statistics pulled from some teenagers in the UK. And as you can see, almost all of them have access and use screens for almost 20.5 hours a week. So screens are really a big part of the life of a teenager, especially now with so much of school being done online as well. So as with many things, screen time does have its pros and its cons. Accessing information online, it provides a lot of learning and development opportunities. It provides opportunities for creativity, for inspiration, self-development. However, there can also be a lot of peer pressure to keep being online, even though you don't really feel like it, you know? Or even certain functions like the autoplay function may do the same thing there as well. There are also many concerns about children or teenagers accessing fake, inappropriate, and dangerous content online, or even the constant exposure to screens that can cause physical issues like eye strain, sleep disturbances, and so on. It can be tempting to multitask with a screen, right? But often it can become a distraction. So to help strike a healthy balance, try putting your phone on Do Not Disturb when you're doing important activities like homework. And remember to take regular breaks from technology and gadgets to start and prioritize family time and sleep over screen time. Parents who are present as well, you can try to create maybe a gadget-free zone in your home. And also you can set a good example with your own screen time use to show your teens or your children how to healthily use screen time. So you also need to know, teenagers who are present, you also need to know how to manage risks that are inherent online. Need to be aware of practical things that you can do to deal with risks like this, like blocking, reporting on the platforms that you use. It's also important to think carefully about what you post online, what you share with others. And this will help you maintain a positive online reputation that will help you when later on you apply for higher education or jobs as well. Parents, you can maybe keep an open communication policy for your teens to come to you with any issues or problems that they face online. Now, you want to encourage them to come to you as the first point of contact. So you may have to rein in your emotions. You need to try and focus on the matter at hand when they do bring it to you. This will encourage them to keep seeking you out as the first point of contact for help. So the last point here as well, it's also important for teenagers yourselves to learn how to self-regulate your own screen time. Many gadgets and platforms, they have certain built-in settings for, it allows you to set alerts to tell you when you've reached a certain amount of time that you want to spend online. It can also give you a summary of the time that you spend online. And this helps you to improve your digital well-being and to make sure that you are not overly dependent on your screens. So it's important to note here that not all screen time is created equal. So I encourage the teenagers here to have a healthy balance between passive screen time, which is like watching YouTube and so on, and interactive screen time, like creating content or playing games online. There is no particular safe level of screen time, but it doesn't necessarily mean that all screen time is harmful. So there's not really very strong evidence, which means experts have found it hard to really recommend a very hard and fast cut off for screen time overall. One size definitely doesn't fit all when it comes to this. So it's more about getting it right for you as well as your family's needs. Okay, so this is the last subtopic under the physical health dimension, body image. Your body image is how and what you think and feel about your body. It includes the picture of your body you have in your mind, which might or might not match your body's actual shape and size. So, a positive or healthy body image is feeling happy and satisfied with your body, as well as being comfortable with and accepting the way that you look. A negative or unhealthy body image is feeling unhappy with the way you look. People who feel like this often want to change their body size or shape, and body image can change throughout your lifetime. A healthy body image is important because when you feel good about your body, you're more likely to have good self-esteem and mental health, as well as a balanced attitude to eating and physical activity as well. So it's normal to be conscious of your body and want to lead a healthier lifestyle. But there can be some signs that you're focusing too much on your body. You might have some anxiety or stress about how you look when you criticize your body. For example, you say you're ugly, or you continually compare your body to others. You may not want to leave the house because of the way you look, or you don't want to try new activities because of the way you feel about your body. You might obsess over losing weight or about specific parts of your body, like your face, your legs, whatever it is. And oftentimes you spend a lot of time taking pictures and really obsessing over any changes, any imperfections. And very often you link food with feelings like guilt, shame, or blame. Unhealthy teenage body image is really directly linked to low self-esteem, which can lead to negative moods or mood swings. Young people who are feeling down are usually more likely to focus on negative messages around you, and you make negative comparisons between your bodies and what you see as the ideal body. Low self-esteem, poor body image are also risk factors for developing risky weight loss strategies, eating disorders, as well as mental health disorders like depression. So what can you do to promote healthy body image for yourself or for your family? A positive attitude includes these aspects: making healthy eating and physical activity choices, avoiding fad diets, crash diets, appreciating your own body for what it can do, meaning function over the looks, just the looks. Being proud of things in yourself, your own qualities that aren't related to your appearance. So if you have a strong sense of who you are, or you are creative, or you are a good dancer, or you do really well in robotics, whatever it is, something that isn't related to your appearance, taking pride in that. And accepting and valuing people no matter how they look. And this is for your outlook on life, on other people, not commenting on how people look. And in fact, looking at what value they bring rather than the outward appearance only. So sometimes unhelpful body attitudes can show up in very subtle comments or teasing without us really being aware of it. So for example, you might see a friend and say something like, "You look great, you've lost so much weight." So comments like this can add up and influence the way people around us, kids, teenagers, feel about their bodies. So it's important to let everyone in your family know that teasing about weight or appearance is not okay. Teasing can have a negative influence on body image and can also lead to bullying. Okay, I'd like to share a video on body image. So let me just get that up.
beauty disruptor. I am a self-esteem advocate, but more than anything, I am a woman who's fed up with linear beauty standards. I grew up right here in Detroit, where the ideal image for Black girls is light skin with long hair. Well, I'm brown skin. I was always curvier. I had a gap in between my teeth, and I had a flat butt. Still do. But I remember vividly overhearing a guy describe me with the attributes that I didn't have. She's not even light-skinned. She got a flat butt. But at this time, you couldn't tell me a thing. I thought I was so cute. And that day taught me a valuable lesson. It taught me how to love myself wholly. And more importantly, it taught me how to never allow someone else's opinion of me to determine my value. For the last 6 years, I've built a cosmetic company with the idea to change the way we think about beauty for ourselves and ultimately how we extend that to those who look differently from us. When I started making lipstick in my kitchen, it wasn't because I was passionate about makeup, no. It was because I was frustrated that attractiveness was consistently looked at through a singular lens. Today, if you search the word beauty, you'll end up with a sea of fair-skinned, thin, young women, as if good looks don't come in any other form. And so, when we have those ideas in the back of our mind, we really start to think that we're ugly. We look at the beautiful people and we think, man, they have it all. They're rich, they're in love, they're happy, they're successful. And I could have that too if I just changed. We start to think that we're not enough of something, that we're lacking in some areas. That causes us to stifle opportunities for ourselves because we feel as though we don't belong and we don't deserve. And even worse, we extend that low confidence and that lack of confidence and that low self-esteem, we extend that onto our sisters, our friends, our cousins. Because if I'm not enough, she's definitely not enough, right? For years, women were taught that our value was directly linked with our looks, our ability to get married, our ability to have children. And even today, now that women are starting businesses, taking office, taking over the world essentially, we're still relegated to this idea that beauty and our looks are most important. We see this in every industry, from Serena dominating on the tennis court, to Hillary running for president, all the way down to Louisiana, where a little girl wasn't permitted to go to school because of her braided hairstyle. Now, braids have always been a long-standing part of African and African-American beauty culture. And just because you don't practice it doesn't mean that you can't accept or respect it. And I don't know about you, but the last time I checked, my hairstyle didn't prevent me from learning. The tutu that I wear on the tennis court doesn't prevent me from winning a Grand Slam. And the color suit that I wear, it certainly doesn't make me ill-equipped to run a country. But what's attractiveness anyway? And shouldn't it be subjective? Well, yes and no. What's attractive has become a popularized understanding of our cultural footprint. What we as individuals believe is attractive is directly stemmed from our environment. That's why men really just want to marry women just like their moms. And as much as we want to hate them for it, they can't help it. That's their first perspective of what beauty and love is. Like if I were to grow up in Ghana, I would value my thick thighs a lot more than I do having grown up in the US. And while the world is becoming more interconnected than ever, we're seeing that the global standard of beauty is quickly becoming the Western standard of beauty. So much so that in countries like South Africa or China, where the population is largely people of color, white women are still at the forefront of these commercial campaigns. So it doesn't surprise me to hear that 70% of women in Lagos, Nigeria, bleach their skin. even though skin bleaching has been linked to cancer. What that tells me is that $10 billion industry is being upheld by this idea that beauty is linear. Those women are just trying to get ahead. This idea leaves plus-size women feeling invalid, mature women feeling as though they age out of their beauty beyond their childbearing years, and ethnic women feeling unwanted. And don't get me wrong, while it impacts women the most, it's not only us who suffer. Most male CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are taller than average because height is linked to attractiveness and power. This is a multi-generational, gender-neutral issue. Our children are growing up not valuing themselves and certainly not being able to extend that love and acceptance onto their peers. Those children grow up with low self-esteem and end up being consumers of weight loss fads, of plastic surgery. Have you guys noticed the plastic surgery trend? Surgery on your butt and thigh is up 4,200% since the year 2000. How crazy is that? And so it makes me think back to when I was a little girl and I thought about me not having a butt. You know, if I didn't have that confidence to keep going on, I could be one of these statistics. So how do we transform? How do we start loving ourselves? Well, first of all, we have to figure out what those triggers are that make us feel less than. Is it scrolling through social media? You may need to give it a break. Is it going shopping? Or is it simply just going over Granny's to hear her tell you how much weight you've gained since the last time she saw you? Figure out what those items are and cut them off. I'm telling you, if Granny is pulling you down, Granny has got to go. You have to be prepared to go to bat for your identity in this pop culture-driven society. So I challenge each of you, when you go home today, look at yourself in the mirror. See all of you. Look at all of your greatness that you embody. Accept it and love it. And finally, when you leave the house tomorrow, try to extend that same love and acceptance to someone who doesn't look like you. Thank you.
Give me a second. So I hope that has given you some thoughts, some time to think about how body image really affects us and affects us from the time we are young all the way up to whatever age you are at the point at this point. It's not something that is specific only to girls and women, but it's also very much applicable for men and boys as well. So now let's get into the next dimension, which is mental health. And let's first look at the current mental health issues faced by teenagers today. So here are some statistics. This is from WHO, World Health Organization. And as you can see, mental health issues are prevalent globally and have possibly worsened during this pandemic. Here are some statistics from our global experience of the pandemic. Now, these are some of the specific symptoms of what people have been experiencing in terms of mental health issues since the outbreak began. Now, most people reported feeling emotionally exhausted or feeling an increased general sense of sadness in their daily lives. Many also feel or felt easily irritable they may feel triggered, or they may burst out in anger at things that previously didn't cause them to react this way. So we can see some more common symptoms here, but do bear in mind that not everyone experiences similar or all of these symptoms. So we should be more supportive and more open-minded about how we approach people in our lives whom we think are struggling. In that same vein, many teenagers have also reported struggling with isolation, loneliness, as well as family relationships during this pandemic. Having mostly online school, online classes, and the resulting lack of interaction with classmates, teachers, and friends is really tough, especially when most of your school life previously has been so full of interaction. Zoom fatigue is also very real, and many teens reported feeling drained, feeling constantly tired from that constant online interaction without a change of pace or a change of environment. Family relationships are also more tense, more rife with miscommunication since the pandemic began. Families have had to cope with loss of employment, loss of resources, which can lead to a tense and stressful home life. And sometimes there is also maybe a lack of personal space at home for everybody to comfortably do what they need, which can lead to conflict or fighting, bickering. And all this is also made worse by the lack of mobility to leave the home, to de-stress, which at least in the earlier stages of the pandemic at least. So how can we improve these issues or this situation? You can try connecting with your classmates, your friends outside of school hours to organize online game nights or movie nights. And this can help create new experiences outside of that usual classroom environment. You can also try to be more mindful of your screen time, as we talked about earlier, and ensure that you handle any kind of fatigue issues. So take a break, rest your eyes, rest your brain, rest your body. So you be more mindful of how much time you're spending online. To improve connection between family members, maybe you can try to organize family meetings where everybody shares something new or something important about their lives. These meetings should be a safe space. So everyone comes expecting for issues to be treated safely, and everybody comes with a calm, open mind to encourage calm conversations about issues. So you need to learn how to manage your own emotions and encourage others to do the same. And this will help create an open communication channel between family members. Apart from those issues that I've just talked about, here I'd like to discuss some general information on a few of the more common mental health concerns that seem to be increasing during the pandemic. These are usually depression, stress, and anxiety. Now, depression is usually seen as a pervasive and intense sadness that can affect all aspects of your functioning, your behavior, your thoughts, and your emotions as well. Some symptoms you may observe are listed here: discouragement, not finding previously interesting activities interesting anymore, you lose interest; lack of motivation, feeling overwhelmed with daily tasks. Stress is another common complaint these days, and it usually manifests like with irritability, where you may lash out in anger at things that usually wouldn't really cause that reaction. You may also see it as fatigue, feeling really tired all the time, or even right after waking up in the morning. Muscle pain or headaches that continue even with medication, or even if the doctor says there's nothing really physically wrong. Anxiety is another common concern these days. Now, anxiety appears as a persistent or excessive worrying and is usually indicated by panic attacks with or without a trigger. It can also manifest as insomnia, persistent worry or anxiety, and also muscle pains and aches sometimes. Now that we've got an idea of some common mental health concerns, let's look at some specific red flags that you may observe in yourself or in others around you that may indicate an experience or struggling with mental health issues. We'll look at this through 3 viewpoints: behaviorally, which is what you can observe, physically, which is what you observe in terms of the physical self, the body, and emotionally or psychologically, which is what you observe in terms of thinking patterns or emotional state. So you may observe some of these behaviors like withdrawing, isolation, isolating themselves or yourself, destructive or excessively risky behaviors, overuse of drugs, alcohol, a loss of interest in things that you used to enjoy. For example, someone who maybe used to paint or play music for fun, now they don't engage in those activities anymore. You might also observe an avoidance of things that are stressful or what we call stressors, like meetings or presentations in cases where these events cause anxiety for the person. So the person avoids going to meetings or doing presentations. Some physical red flags to watch out for are like aches, pains that the doctor says are not medical issues, very noticeable weight loss or gain, again, unexplained through medical examination, or a change in terms of grooming habits, hygiene habits, physical appearance. So someone who is usually relatively acceptably groomed now doesn't really bother at all about it. Some emotional or psychological red flags to look out for are excessive emotional outbursts or expression, whether it's sadness or anxiety, and also extreme or uncontrolled mood changes from sadness to euphoria. If there are problems focusing on work or studies, or you see some confusion or consistent, prolonged feelings of irritability or even anger. So now you've got an idea of the different red flags to look out for. How do you attend to the issues that you may be facing yourself? So how do you help yourself if you are in this situation? So firstly, recognize that it's okay to not feel or even be okay. We all go through difficult times at some point in our lives, and denying it or pushing it down won't help. In fact, it makes things worse for you because these feelings will fester and become more problematic. So you try and figure out the reasons behind your emotions rather than always distracting yourself. Now, distractions may work sometimes, temporarily, but it's usually not a permanent fix. You can try different coping mechanisms, and I encourage you to try and focus on the underlying issues as much as possible, rather than use avoidance techniques. Now, remember, media and social media tends to be a way to cope and avoid dealing with our real problems. So use it wisely and sparingly. Be conscious, be mindful about this. I get that sometimes avoidance may work for a temporary fix, but be mindful that you're not just using it to ignore your experiences and your feelings and your thoughts. Also important, you need to learn to tap into your social support resources, whether it's family or friends, online support group, religion, so on. what is your social support resource? These provide you with an external source of support while you also work on yourself individually. Now, in that same line of thought, also recognize when you need more help or professional help. You do not need to face this alone. What about if it's your family or friends who are the ones struggling? What can you do to help and support them? First of all, and I really emphasize this, don't dismiss or judge when they share their struggles or their thoughts with you. They're not looking for attention. They're looking for help and looking for support. It's very difficult to admit you're struggling with mental health because there's a stigma, there are many misconceptions. So try to not discount their experiences. Try to listen actively and try to empathize and know that advice is not always necessary and definitely not always helpful. A lot of the time, just listening actively and empathizing is more than enough. Here are some mobile apps that you could try out that you can access to help and manage your own mental health, or you may also want to suggest them to people in your life who may find them useful. Now, some of these are paid apps, some have free versions and paid versions, so you can feel free to explore. There's a lot more than just this online. So if you think you or the person in your life who may be struggling may benefit from this, you can try these out as well. So this is a way to make use of technology for the greater good. And also, here are some mental health centers that you can reach out to if you or someone you know needs professional mental health help. All of these will be linked in the slides, which I believe you will have access to, so you'll be able to look at it from the slides. In conclusion, I'd like to emphasize the importance of both physical and mental health to help you live a more full, a healthier life all around. Thank you so much for having me here today. I hope I've added to your knowledge, and I look forward to the Q&A next. Thank you very much. Is it okay if I go to Q&A, Ms. Juliet?
Okay.
All right, so I'll just go on to
Hi,
Q&A.
sorry.
No
Yes,
problem.
I'm just going to the Q&A now. Are there any questions for Ms. Anuja?
I think there were some questions in the Google form. Maybe I can address them.
Sure.
Okay. Just give me a second, yeah.
There are also some questions in the chat.
Okay, I'll address them after I do this. I think some of the questions in the pre-webinar survey I've addressed in my talk. So let's see. Why is there a reluctance to propose divine solutions for mental health? I don't know if I'm the best person to respond to this, but I believe that you can access resources. So like I mentioned, religion or social support systems are also essential to healthy mental health. And if a religious or spiritual connection is something that you value, that is of value to you, you can definitely tap into that as a source of support as well. So that would be my take on it. But probably I'm not the best person to respond to that particular question, but that would be my take on this. The next question is how to handle depression on your own and how to know when you are in depression. So I've mentioned some mental health red flags in this talk, which you can use as a general guide. But I always emphasize that if you are concerned that you have deep-seated issues, underlying mental health issues, it's always best to get a professional to assess. So seek out maybe from the list of resources that I've listed in the slides. If you're here listening today, then seek out help using the professional resources that I've sent. And that would be the best way to really get a better idea of what's really going on within you. Okay, how to study during stressful periods. So I understand stress can be quite debilitating. It can reduce your functionality to a point where nothing is really going in. So to study during stressful periods, when you are at high stress periods, is definitely not going to be an ideal situation. So my suggestion would be for you to deal with the stress first, and this can come in different forms. If you are someone who enjoys physical activity and that de-stresses you, or things like meditation, yoga, or listening to music, whatever activity helps you to de-stress, I would suggest you do that first to help reduce that physical alertness level that stress causes. When you reduce that, when your heart beat starts to calm down, your breathing calms down with it, you are probably going to be more able to focus on studying and stuff like that. So that would be my suggestion. How to open up to parents about depression and sexuality. Now, this is a tough one. So it definitely will depend on you, on your parents, your relationship, and it's not something I can answer with a general statement. But what I would say is probably the most important thing is to build an open communication channel. So if your situation is such that you don't have that with your parents, it will be more difficult for you. But that would be something to do, to incorporate in your family life, to help you build a connection with your parents, to help them connect with you as well. So open communication, managing your emotions, these are usually things that I work on with my private clients. But it really depends on you, on your parents, and the relationship that you have. So I won't be able to really give you a very complete answer. How do we overcome anxiety, or what should I do when I feel anxious? So anxiety, if you're talking about panic attacks, or maybe leading up to panic attacks, you feel very anxious, you feel agitated. Some techniques that we usually teach our clients in counseling is to do breathing exercises. So you take deep breaths in, breaths out. And we also teach our clients certain activities like grounding exercises. These exercises basically remove the focus from the anxiety to focus on yourself. So it's a bit like mindfulness as well, being more focused on your body and your body signals, and trying to work with that to bring your breathing down, your heart palpitations down to a more calm level. And that usually brings you to a state of less anxiety. So that's what we usually do. Now, you can look up certain things online, but if you are experiencing panic attacks and things like that, I would strongly suggest that you seek out professional help to really help you get a better handle on the issue itself. Okay, I think that is it from the...
Anuja, there is a question in the chat.
Sure.
How serious is mental health, teen mental health, and how does it affect the population?
Okay.
How to treat mental health issue?
All right. So teen mental health, we don't really have like Malaysia specific stats, but because the population of teenagers, they're going through a period of development, of change, of really learning more about themselves, and to throw in the pandemic and a whole bunch of other things happening, it becomes quite a contentious period of time. So if you ask me how important is teen mental health, I would say it's very important that we pay attention to this particular population, the teenagers themselves and their mental health, because if left untreated, it carries on into adulthood, becomes worse. When they go into the working world or they decide to start up their own business. What happens if they haven't learned how to cope with stress, how to cope with anxiety and depression, or even if in cases where they may need extra mental health help, if they haven't gotten that, how are they going to grow away from what their symptoms are? So you will have to really consider the fact that teenagers become adults, and if not treated when they're teens or young adults, these problems carry on into adulthood. So that would be my response to that.
There's another question from Dr. Sauri. How big is the problem of drug use among students once they're out of home?
Problem of drug use, I don't have the stats on that. Yeah, I'm not really sure about that, so I wouldn't be able to comment on that on drug use.
Okay. Are there any other questions from our participants? You can turn on your mic to ask the questions as well.
Yeah, actually, I posed a question in the chat, beside the one that just answered about how do you treat the mental health, actually from nutrition point of view instead of using drug,
Yeah, I saw this question on magnesium deficiency is the main factor. Is that the one from you, Mr. Jordan? There's a question there. Magnesium deficiency is the main factor affecting mental health. And how would you?
That's from Jordan Tan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is that the question that Mr. Jordan is referring to?
Probably.
Unmute yourself.
That's a question actually, but I give a comment that usually they'll turn to those antidepressant drugs, because it's very serious in the US. But here I'm talking about nutrition therapy instead of using a drug, because the deficiency trigger off the depression, or some other condition, so it may not be related to deficiency in the drug. It's actually it's a nutrition problem. That's my understanding.
Can I take that question? Okay, I'm Dr. Indrani. I'm actually a medical doctor. Okay, I understand your concern about this, but you see, before a person actually is diagnosed with depression, depression is actually when there is an imbalance of hormones also. So there is some imbalance of these hormones in the brain, and that is causing depression. So magnesium, some of these minerals like zinc, iron, magnesium, and then vitamins like vitamin B and all that, we can use. But when there is a profound depression, then we cannot depend on just nutrition alone, because there are other factors. And before it becomes bad, we need to use these drugs to actually stabilize the patient. And then we can actually, we need to stabilize the patient before he goes into the extreme extreme level of depression, which cause suicidal and all that. So I hope I've answered your question. You can use nutrition only in very mild cases, but not when the patient is already exhibiting depression. You may lose the battle, because the patient may go into suicidal if you don't treat it quickly. So we have to be very careful at that point of time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Otherwise, thank you, Dr. Tirani and Ms. Anuja, for your time this afternoon. I would now like to invite Ping, who is our president of Soroptimist International Club of Bangsar, to share with us about our club and what we do. Ping, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Juliet. And thank you very much, Ms. Anuja, for your very interesting discourse. I hope our listeners would have gained considerable knowledge on the topic of teen health, both physical and mental. I'd like to share with you a little bit about Soroptimist International, Club of Bangsar. Just give me a minute. Okay, Optimus International is a global voice for women. We are an international NGO, and we are affiliated to we have consultative status with the United Nations. We are a global volunteer movement working to transform the lives of women and girls through awareness, advocacy, and action. We just celebrated our 100th birthday in October. This was founded in 1921 in Oakland, California. Our club is called Soroptimist International Club of Bangsar, and we are one of 16 clubs in Malaysia. And we are going to be celebrating 29 years on the 23rd of October. We have been working on projects to improve the lives of the Orang Asli, single mothers, and the B40 families. We educate children on personal safety and AIDS, and we conducted leadership projects with college and university students. Our current project is this teenage survival kit and Bank Runcit, which is a food bank we set up in Petaling Jaya. So I hope this gives you a snapshot of what we do, and we look forward to seeing you in our future webinars. We hope to be able to conduct physical workshops on teenage survival kit when the pandemic allows us. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and we hope to see you again. Thank you once again to Ms. Anuja.
Thanks, Ping. That's the end of our program. But before you go, could you please fill in the post-webinar evaluation form, which our SIM has posted in the chat. I want to thank all of you for coming to this webinar this afternoon. Thank you for taking the time off, and we wish you a wonderful week ahead. Thank you, everyone.